All right, April.
Joe.
Thank you. I'm going to start by thanking you a lot. I really appreciate you coming in to do this. Before we even get started, I want you to know when we talk about any politics, I barely know anything. So if I ask any questions that are really simple, it's because I don't know a lot. So
No, that's cool. You follow along. You're not giving yourself enough credit.
Well, maybe a little bit locally, maybe, but I still don't. I would say, honestly, if I graded my own politics knowledge, it'd be like a 1.3 out of 10.
Really?
So I think it's going to be safe to assume if you're saying something, I don't really know much. I follow you, but just so you know. But the first thing I want to bring up is I'm not sure how much of my stuff that you see or not, but I did some interviews in front of the Beer Vendale and Wainfleet.
Yes, I did see those.
And that was regarding whether or not people in Wainfleet thought that cannabis dispensaries could be brought to Wainfleet.
Right, I remember. And I was no longer the mayor. Right, yeah.
Now,
that's probably why I watched them and enjoyed them.
So now, I'm just curious, if you were mayor, how would you have stood on bringing dispensaries to Wainfleet?
Well, I watched your video, and a lot of the people, to be honest, I was kind of gauging who were Wainfleet residents and who weren't. And to me, it looked like it was more than half that maybe were passers-by. I could be wrong, though. I could be wrong. That was a while ago. And so from what I heard, and I've been following along with the new council, and having been the mayor for 8 years, I get the sense that wouldn't be an overly popular thing to have here in Wainfleet. And I mean, at the end of the day, the government was only approving a handful in Ontario, and I think just one for Niagara was my understanding at the time. And I really don't think it was going to go to Wainfleet. But the big issue, I think, moving forward is the medical, or the grow ops in general in Wainfleet. And I was actually at an event just this past week, and they had Jim Brandel from the Vineland Horticulture, I can't remember the exact name, Innovation Center in Vineland, and he was talking about the great things moving forward with having the grow ops, the legal
opportunities.
Yeah, and so Mayor Gibson was there, and Mayor Junkin from Pelham, and so I know that they're hearing it from their community. So it's tough because you have to kind of find that balance between what your residents want and then what could possibly be an advantage to the community. But I just get the sense here in Wainfleet that the majority don't want, grow ups or kind of anything of that kind, because we did have issues with it. And I know that was more when the legislation was first coming in, and people were allowed to have so many plants legally, but then we had instances where then they had other plants that weren't. And then we had a couple fires and different things that a lot of people don't know. So it's not easy, and I don't think all the kinks are worked out. And if you drive through other parts of the region, I noticed on the outskirts of Niagara Falls that there's a big sign spray painted saying no cannabis farm, and it points down a road. So it's not just us. Like, Pelham is concerned about it, Wainfleet, other municipalities, and I think the municipalities are still kind of trying to find their way with how to deal with all this. So
see, I find that interesting you bring up, because even you've lived in Wainfleet
almost 20 years.
20 years. I've been here 35, but you know more people in Wainfleet than I do, being mayor 8 years. So,
well, I don't know. You're a pretty popular guy. It's you and your brother, so.
No doubt. But I find that interesting because when I did the interviews, I can't remember everybody now, but I didn't know if people were from Wainfleet or not. So that's interesting because I went there figuring, of course, a lot of people outside of Wainfleet go there, but I figured that's the best spot to run into fleeters.
No, and there were I recognized a ton of people that you interviewed, but and I don't know for sure, but I thought some people too said they were from Dunnville, and because I know that the Beer Vendale, because it is an LCBO outlet that we don't just get people frequenting that from Wainfleet. It's everywhere. A passing, That's why we need a Tim Hortons.
That would be nice. That would be nice. I wonder how they would feel about that.
I think if it was far enough away,
Yeah.
I think it would be okay. Because the
Yeah.
Donut Diner does their own thing. They
Yeah.
do their homemade breakfasts and the homemade sandwiches.
I don't even know how much it would hurt. Yeah.
I think they have their following and
Yeah.
they do their specific thing, and you go in there to buy chips or booze or milk or whatever, and then you can have something to eat. So we looked into actually inquiring, having Tim Hortons come to Wainfleet,
Wow.
but they because we thought that gas station over by the town hall would
Right.
be a great spot, but they
Wow.
very rarely will set up shop unless there are like city services like water.
Wow.
So yeah. I
Gotcha.
think maybe it was without sewer and water, but
That's a big challenge
water.
we have here, eh? Bringing in any business is sewer
Yeah,
water.
that was the whole kind of time I was mayor was
Right.
most people didn't want the big pipe, but
Right.
but yeah, I know
Right. That was a big topic while you were in.
yeah, well, actually, once we kind of were done, said that we were not supportive of it at the region, and the region at that time. So that was early on in my time as mayor in 2011.
Is that when you started?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the region at that point, I think there was a lot of frustration on their part as well, and the price tag was so expensive, and they didn't have the money to pay for it, and they knew trying to kind of put it on the backs of the taxpayer would be, the taxpayers were going to push back because
Right.
it was going to be a lot of money.
Like millions.
Yeah, I forget the figures exactly, but I think at that time we were pushing the 100 million mark.
Wow.
Yeah, to service 1,300 homes. It's more now, but not a lot more. And
So it was going to come up Lakeshore, right? Because at that time...
yeah, it was going to connect to the Port Colborne plant, like wastewater plant, and then go all the way to the Haldeman border, like in Low Banks.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
So is that anywhere around Cement Plant Road or...
Yeah, it would start, roughly around Cement
there.
Plant Road and then run right down the lakeshore to like Low Banks area. And then, but one of the problems was it would be hard to, in the wintertime, to keep it circulating properly. I don't know all the technical terms.
Yeah.
But because it's seasonal out at the lake, then you have, I think, roughly, and maybe the figures have changed, but at the time, 40% of the residents go home. So then that water's not,
usage is less.
yeah, and it's not cycling through. So there were, and then elevations too. I know on Morgan's Point Road, they'd need different pumping stations to get it kind of back up the
Right.
road. And then the bedrock was a big issue as well, blasting through that. Now, I've been told since there are ways to blast more like a shallow blast. But then there were also, they had done like a heritage study, and I was on that committee before I was mayor, and we had seen a lot of signs of indigenous remains. And then so coming across
Wow.
that through any kind of
More hurdles.
major development like that, you would be immediately stopped. And we did see that.
So the pipe could have been in progress, and if you come across some I don't know, Indian stuff,
Yep.
they stop it.
That's the way I understand it, because we had a home on Harborview years ago that was building a garage, and they found remains,
Right.
and they contacted the police, and through further investigation, they realized they were indigenous remains, and so I think that person was like 6 months before they could resume their garage. And then that happened again on Harborview not that long ago. I don't think
Wow.
the turnaround time, like I think they were able to move those remains and do the proper burial that's required. But that's twice on Harborview. So that tells you like
That
they're...
can happen again.
they said they were long houses. Like it's where, thousands of years ago, I think people would settle along the lake area.
Right.
And so I think there's lots of spots along the lake. So it's really neat. It's really cool when you think
That
about it.
That is, yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So there, you learned something.
Yeah, I love it. I wasn't even thinking about the big pipe, but yeah, that was back.
That was, that I think started up maybe 2003, and then there was a lot of opposition to it, and then our council was voted in 2010, 2011, and then we pulled back our support or whatever for it.
Right.
And then that was that was pretty much the end of it. But I know there's still, concerns. We had people talk about concerns with, we did the septic inspection program, and a lot of people did move forward and replace their septics. And do you when you're selling houses along the area, do you find that an issue, like out at the lake with
where I find more problems with septics is along the river than the lake.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I've run into some interesting situations along the river for sure. But the lake, not so much. I sold a property, it's a little bit of time ago now, since the lots are so small, they had a tertiary septic system. I didn't even know what that was. They're a little bit more expensive, but they're designed for small lots.
Yeah, and there are certain stages, I think, of the treatment, and
it's pretty cool because a standard septic. I mean, I didn't expect to talk about this. But
Sorry, that's
no, I like it. We're in Wainfleet, so standard septic's 2 tanks, right? The 2 tanks, but with the tertiary, there's 4 tanks, and there's aeration system and pumps, and they're circulating everything. And I've been told that when it comes out, the water comes out, it's drinkable. I don't know, but
I've heard that too, and they say it's kind of the new way moving forward. And I did know a few residents who had those, but they're not cheap. I heard there's like a $40,000 price tag on that. Yeah.
See, what the house I sold, I think the sellers told us it costed $30,000, but they had already put it in before, and I haven't had any client quote it recently, but. Yeah, septic. I think ours was $27,000. I think.
Right.
But
and you've got the mound.
Yeah,
okay.
Out front. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I think the tertiary still needs a mound. I'm not sure. Okay. I'm not an expert, but it definitely is great. It's designed for the small lots, which I imagine out on the lake, it's without the pipe. This is gonna be a solution.
And then some people, you're not on a new build, you can't do holding tanks anymore. Right. But if you're revamping or your septic goes and you're an existing house or lot of, well, not a lot of record, but you're an existing house, then you can do a holding tank. But they have. I mean, then you have to pump it all the time, and then we've seen over the years people running their gray water line out, and all that kind of
Lots of people do that. Yeah, so shouldn't, but yeah.
So it's a tough, because of the cost and where the 1,300 homes are located along the lakeshore. And the argument was, well, if you're going to make us do it, then you have to make other municipalities in Niagara do it, and other municipalities throughout Ontario, because we weren't, the only one. So we, like I say, we did the inspection program, and that wasn't popular, but people really did, once we kind of got the cost and everything in place, people really did
see the value.
Yeah, well, and they were just really responsible about it. Like, I don't remember, I could be wrong, maybe the bylaw officer will watch this and say, that's not right, April, but
it's okay.
I don't think they had to chase too many people down. Like, people just kind of wanted to know either way what was going to happen. So
see, and right now I'm actually in an interesting situation where I have a client looking into buying a property, and it's on the lake. It's actually just in Haldeman, so it doesn't apply to us, but the situation we're in, there's a lot, I forget, it's about 40 by 150 on the lake, and it's an old cottage, and they're looking to tear it down. And right now, it's a holding tank. But new construction is supposed to be septic.
Okay.
But there's, even with the tertiary system, I don't think there's enough room, because you have to be so far away from water sources. And there's their water, their cistern, the neighbor's cistern, and the neighbor's cistern. So that's the challenge we're actually having right now, is if they buy it and rebuild, how are they going to do it? I think they've come to terms it's not desirable to put in a holding tank, but we're still trying to figure out if they can get an enlarged one, because the one that's there is a smaller one, and it's got to get pumped more. It's more expensive. So at least if they could put a big one, but. Yeah, that's a challenge I'm going through right now. Yeah. And there's lots of properties that have all kinds of situations along there. The lake is the most interesting property design I've ever seen in my life.
Well, and I think that's because, years ago, even 100 years ago, let's say, people went out and just built, and they had outhouses and what have you. And then over the years, that I think when it's slowly like, hey, we could live out here all year long. Let's put a furnace in and insulate it. And the zoning bylaw at the time didn't keep up with it. Like, even where I live, you can tell at one point, my property went from the lake to the road, but then someone somewhere along the way must have gone to the township in the probably
Right.
the 60s or something and said, I want to make some money. Can we sever this lot and I'll sell the front part on the road? And so they did. And now when you pull in my driveway, it's a shared driveway with the other neighbors as well. But
Right.
you've got this little blue cottage, and it's more of a permanent home now. But it probably was intended to be a cottage.
Right.
And then you have my house. So, and I've kind of thought, who was the person who thought that this would be okay? But it's going way back before the planning. So that's probably what
Are
you
you
see.
waterside?
Yeah, I'm on.
But not roadside.
No, so my property
Oh.
doesn't go to the road. It's my
Interesting.
house faces the lake, and then I have my house and my garage is detached, and then
Right.
a little fence, and then the little blue
Wow.
house, which the people who own it are very nice. They're from
Nice.
Hamilton, and they come down every weekend and they rent it. But at certain times, it's gone through different ownership
Right.
quite a few times, and
That's an interesting setup.
yeah.
That's when I look at all the property sizes, dimensions along the lake. There is so many different things that have happened there.
I know, and that's what it stems
Yeah,
from, and that's
that's
where
one.
the sewer and water thing started.
Right.
People were saying we need to address this, but in some ways you could say it was already too far gone. So we'd have to, we used to say we need to find a made in Wainfleet solution that works for everybody. Because
Right.
what happens too is then you're driving people out. Like you have people there who, maybe inherited like a home, and maybe not even on the lake, but in that stretch down Lakeshore Road. And, if you're talking 80 grand or more to run sewer and water through, like they can't
Wow.
afford that. And that's what we would hear from
Is that
people
what it
as
was
well.
looking like?
I think-
Something like that? Wow.
It was, I think it was roughly around 70 or 80 grand to run the pipe past the house. And then you would still have your setup costs when you figured it out.
I
and
didn't realize it
yeah,
was that
it
much.
was, it was high.
That
yeah.
is substantial.
And they made, they did make application a couple times for funding, but it was never approved.
To try and get it subsidized or
Yeah, to get like government funding, like federal government funding, but it was never approved. So it was
even 80 grand. I believe, because I wasn't 8 years ago or whenever, I wasn't following it much, but I heard that they were looking at financing it through property taxes over a period of time.
Yeah, it
but
would
even
be
80 grand over any amount of time is a lot of money.
Yeah, and then there were things too, like then we would have had to have a full like water billing department, and it would have added on.
More
there were all
costs.
these things that like the township would have, like the office staff, people complain. I'm sure you've heard that.
Yeah.
Already about having so much staff at the township.
Yeah,
And so then you would
gets
have
brought up.
added all this in. There would have had to be more public works people, and it would have gone on and on from
More
there.
expenses,
So.
more expenses.
Yeah. And people seem to want.
See, that's such a tricky
Yeah, it is.
situation.
It is. And so we'll see if, what happens in the future with, because we know there's pressure coming from the GTA. Like that's something even as a federal candidate, I'm hearing that actually that's something can we talk about?
Of course, we can talk about anything.
So I've been knocking on a lot of doors lately, and I hear a lot of people talking about housing affordability. And so
Yes.
I think to some people, they think it's great that the prices have, because it's been a couple of years now, right? That the prices have really
about 2 years
jumped up. But I hear it like every couple doors. People, they're either retired and on a fixed income and concerned that eventually if or when they'll have to sell their house, where are they going to go? Because rent's so high.
Right.
And then, so you might get X amount of dollars for your house, which seems great, but then what are you going to
Where do you
buy?
go?
Yeah. Like I've even thought that with my house. If I, eventually decide to sell or have to sell, you never know what life throws at you.
Yeah.
I maybe would get pretty good money being at the lake, but then where do I go? What do I buy? And then the concern too about our kids. Like I know you don't have kids yet,
Not
but
yet, yeah.
I've got my son, my one son is 19, my other son is 16. And so we were just actually talking this morning about how like I could have them living with me
Forever.
because
Yeah.
we see that. I talked to a lady yesterday in Thorold who had kids my age, but she was pointing across the street to the neighbors, and she said they have a 26-year-old and a 24-year-old, and they have good jobs, but they're just trying to save for that down payment to buy a house, and rent's so expensive. So
a couple things with that. The hardest transition I see is the downsizing, and the reason for that. Well, even before I talk about downsizing, going up is easier, because when buying a home, buyers, they have a set budget. So let's say somebody's got a budget of $250,000. Well, for some reason, while we're looking at houses, they get a raise, or they've inherited a little bit of money and they can bump up to $300,000 or whatever it is. It's a lot easier to see value as you're going up from different price points. You start finding maybe a little bit better neighborhood, better finishes, these things. But when downsizing, the challenge is most people enjoy where they're living, and then when they sell their house, let's say $400,000, now they think, well, I could live in half the size house, and they're thinking maybe I'll spend $200,000. But when you go down, it doesn't quite work like that, because everybody kind of wants what they have but smaller. But those options, it's the toughest transition.
Okay. Well, that's interesting.
Yeah, it is.
Look at it that way. Yeah.
It's tough, and I've been through a number of them, and I'm still trying to figure out a way to help people plan for that. And I don't know the best way to do it either, because I'm still working on that. But when you mentioned to affordability, yes, I imagine this is something that comes up for you. And the way that I look at it is, there's a couple things. Anybody that owns a home or properties is very fortunate that they owned it, if they owned it before a couple years ago when the market shot up, because anybody that owned anything just got an explosion of equity. I'm even confident to say a lot of people made $100,000 in equity over the couple of years. The most affordable property in the area is Park Holbrook, Fort Erie, and the houses there even went up by that much. Where when I started in real estate 5-6 years ago, the market was flat. It was going up a couple percent a year. And I think the federal Canadian average is like 2-3% appreciation a year. And we've seen, I don't even know what the number was, 50%, 60, 100. I don't know. Houses went up crazy.
Yeah.
But with affordability, so people that own it, they're in good shape because they own already, and now they have that extra equity that if they needed it and needed to buy another one, some people are looking at investment. You can pull equity from your house and buy. But first-time buyers, that is the big challenge.
Tough, yeah.
So the first thing that I recognize here in Niagara is our first-time buyers, although it's hard, they're in less hard of a position than first-time buyers in GTA.
Sure.
Because first-time buyers in GTA, you spend $500,000, you get a condo maybe the size of this room, maybe a little bigger. But here in Niagara, $500,000, you're still getting a really nice house. So, but entry level is lower. But yeah, now we have the challenge that making less money in the area.
Right.
And so
And exactly, and then that's where there's like a lot of talk about affordable housing, and how do we get people, builders to make that investment in affordable housing in the area, and it's such a it's a complicated, kind of diverse conversation. But when you're talking, because then you have, I've heard people talk about different sites, old buildings, old high schools, but then there's so many zoning bylaws, and then sometimes there's environmental issues with things. And so, because I think people have kind of looked at those options, and I can't think of an example off the top of my head, but
in high school is one that's you get under.
So that's great to see. But like you hear people talk about rent and things like that, and that movement from the GTA, and even like I heard somebody say about the gas station being revived at Chambers Corners, and one of the kind of local people who would always come to our council meetings and stuff said that's because you're going to get, they may not be settling here necessarily, but people moving through the area, and kind of talk that Highway 3 will become a busier corridor.
Right.
People coming from, the Hamilton area, and moving through that way. And then, there was something else in my brain and now it's gone about, and now we see in Port Colborne that development beside Harvey's, and that's going to be a gas station, and I think an A&W. And
I heard that.
Yeah. So then that, I saw that and I thought, that kind of, because again, you're seeing
more people coming.
Yeah.
So I was expecting, I'm already learning from you, but I'll share a little bit from my perspective too, is when the market shot up about 2 years ago, give or take, we seen a huge increase of people coming from GTA. So just, I'll give you kind of my perspective. I don't know if it'll help or not, but with all the people coming from GTA, I've even sold right here in Memi Court to somebody from Toronto. What I've seen is, and Fleeters, I love the area, obviously. And as people coming from GTA for, I think, more financial reasons, because they can sell there, come here, get the same thing for same house, better house for cheaper, whatever. People always say sell in Toronto for $1 million, come here and buy for 500. It's not always the case. Not everybody in Toronto owns $1 million home even, but people are coming here and then they realize how awesome Niagara is, because Niagara really is awesome. I love it clearly, but it is a great place. We've got amazing beaches. We're close to the border. We got the vineyards. We got small businesses, community people like you. So when people are coming from GTA, they're starting to realize this, and they're telling their family and friends.
Right.
And it's more affordable, and I'm going to say better. We're better here. So people from, I say, this is how I see it. People from GTA came for all the reasons, but now I feel like Niagara's been discovered. Yeah. And it's not going to slow down. Yeah. That's my opinion.
Yeah. Well, it's safer in some senses too. Right. Like we still, I don't know. We just don't have. I mean, we have crime and we have unfortunate things that happen. There's no question. But yeah, you're right, and we're very diverse. So two things. One is when I'm knocking on doors, I meet a lot of people, especially in the newer developments like in Thorold and Welland, who have come from the GTA. They've only been here a year or two, and they love it. Same thing. And then the other thing is when you were saying about, you've got beaches and then you've got the border and you've got the vineyards. And so there's all this talk about amalgamation and One Niagara. And I don't know what your thoughts are on that, but I find the sense kind of south of Highway 20 is no to, and it's always been like when I was first mayor, there were little rumblings of it. And I remember the mayor of Thorold and I having a couple meetings about it, because we were the smaller kind of municipalities, and there was talk that Wainfleet would be absorbed by Port Colborne and Thorold would be absorbed by St. Catharines. And then it didn't happen, but I learned a lot about Thorold and how similar it kind of is in the cultural close-knit, like Wainfleet. So it was really cool. And but now this is starting up again, and there are people who are really gunning for One Niagara. They think it'll be better, and then like I say, south of Highway 20 don't feel the same way. And we were just at talking about the border, like trade across the border. I was at an event at Niagara College on Thursday, I think it was, and we were kind of talking amongst ourselves about how our diversity is what makes us strong. So to blend these, and the argument is that, people, Wainfleet will still have its identity, Port Colborne will still have its identity. Yeah, it will, but somewhere along the way that does get lost. So when you were saying that about how we are so diverse and Niagara is so great, and that's, I think, the big fear that'll be lost if we amalgamate.
It's interesting, and this is something that I just started hearing recently, because I really don't follow everything too, but this is very interesting. I've heard, I don't know if everybody in Niagara, or I've heard the north-south.
Yeah, there's different, no one knows exactly what's going to come down.
Who decides this?
It's the government, so the new Ford government. So
Ford could just say Niagara is all one. He can do that. Yeah. See, I don't know these things.
Because we're, we've heard this term like creatures of the province, the municipalities. So they could just amalgamate, because it was done back in the 90s in certain areas up around Toronto area. And then, and I think we might have been, I didn't follow, back in the 90s, I was in my 20s and didn't follow along maybe as much. So I think we might have been on the chopping block at one point, or talk of it, 20 so 20 so years ago,
Right.
and then nothing happened. And then, like I say, in 2011 there were some rumblings,
Right.
and then nothing happened. But now like their government, the new government, is pretty determined, like, to find their efficiencies, and so
Right.
I think that yeah, they're definitely considering it. Yeah, and I've
This
never.
could happen.
It could happen. I've said all along, and I've had support on it, that the region should be just the 12 mayors. And if any of the regional councillors are
And what
watching,
is it now?
it's 32. So it's 12 mayors and then regional councillors. So they're
So
representing.
20.
So it's 32 in total representatives.
Yeah, 20.
And
Okay.
and it's based on population. So Wainfleet
Right.
is the only municipality that just has Kevin, like
One
Mayor
city
Gibson.
there,
He's the
yeah.
lone guy up there, and then
And this was you for 8 years.
yeah, and when I was there, West Lincoln was also one representative, but then in the time I was there, they were approved to go to 2 representatives because their municipality has grown. But it makes it difficult to get things done. And there's 2 schools of thought.
Yeah.
You know, you have all those representatives, and that's a lot of democracy. That's great. But then there's the school of thought, like, we'd have these long meetings and everybody would argue about things, and it would
Right.
take forever to kind of move something
Too
along.
many people.
Yeah.
Too
So
many cooks in the kitchen.
and I've always felt that in what I saw in my time there was the people typically go to their mayor. They don't think to call their regional councillor. I mean, in some cases they do. And again, I
Right.
don't want to offend
No,
any fellow, not fellow regional councillors. I'm not
Yeah.
there anymore, but they tend to reach out to their municipal councillors or their mayor.
Right.
So I had...
That makes sense.
So I've said a few times, just have the 12 mayors meet once a month and then scale back some of the services at the region. Like they've got like even in economic development, I mean, that's really expanded, and yet they're still kind of competing. The municipalities are competing, and maybe if they could just work together on their own, there'd be a way they could have some sort of committee and
Right.
meet that way. And like, I think there'd be a way to go back to core services at the region, which would, just be your police, your roads and your bridges,
Right.
and then public health. Although now they're saying public health is going to be amalgamated too. So that's, I don't know if that's a sign of what's to come, because that just came down through the news, I think just earlier this week or late last week, that public health, we're going to amalgamate across Ontario to 10. So I've been kind of trying to follow
Right.
along where the concerns are with that. So
I think this is a good opportunity for this.
okay.
Because this is going to help me even. So just recently, you stopped being mayor to run for, and
So I'm running for the federal election coming up in the fall, October 21st.
October 21st.
And I'm running for the Conservatives in Niagara Center. And so that's...
So remember, I'm a 1.3 out of 10. So you're running federal election.
Yep.
Conservatives.
Yes.
Who are you running against?
I am running, so the candidates, the 4 that I know of, so there's the incumbent, like the current MP, Vance Badaway, who was the mayor of Port Colborne, so I'm sure you know.
I've heard of
Yep.
him. Yeah, never met him. So what party does he
So
belong
he's
to?
Liberal.
Okay. See, like, I know nothing.
No, that's good. And
Yeah.
then Malcolm Allen, who was
I think I've heard that name before.
Malcolm was, I believe, 2 terms. He was the MP. So I think he was...
So you're running for MP?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which stands for?
Member of Parliament.
Okay. See, like,
Yeah. No, but that a lot of people don't know.
Yes.
A lot of people don't know. And like I say, I didn't really follow along until kind of my mid 30s, so about 10, 12 years ago. And then that's when I really started to get involved. And then that's when I considered running for mayor. And then I was kind of thrown into it. So like, I'm still learning too. I mean, some people...
Of course, always learning.
Yeah. Like some people on my campaign team and some of the circles, politically, like they live and breathe this stuff,
Right.
and they remember stuff from like 1984. And I'm like, I was 11 in 1984, so I wasn't paying attention. But so there's still things that I'm, learning as I go.
So why transition from mayor to this?
Because the big thing I found is, especially a small municipality like Wainfleet, is we were kind of so handcuffed by
Right.
different legislation and funding that we could possibly get from the higher levels of government. And I guess it really started with the wind turbine issue. That's where
Hot topic.
Yeah, and I thought, how can you make us have these when we don't want them? And it kind of trickles too into the cannabis farms. And
Right.
so I just couldn't believe that we had to have these and that we had to fight the government. We had, like, I'd have residents coming to the township in tears because they were so afraid of having these, near their property. Yeah. And then then with that, I've had people come in even to talk to me about, property issue or something. And then you get chit-chatting with people. And I think people feel comfortable around me. So start talking.
Definitely.
And then they start telling you more issues, like, because property taxes are always, people feel their taxes are high, and I get that.
Right.
But then it would trickle into, my hydro bill and the cost of propane, and, just life in general is becoming more affordable. And a lot of that comes from, the taxation that we've been seeing the last few years. And then, when you impose something like wind turbines, and then there's this fear of property devaluation or this fear of the unknown, and you're being forced to have something. And so that's where I thought, maybe I could do like doing the 8 years. And I had a lot of issues. I have a couple friends who say, you had more issues than any other mayor. And I'm like, well, I don't know about that. I mean, Stan Pettit was mayor for 26 years. I'm sure he had his fair share. Yeah. But
issues are just more public now, maybe.
I think, yeah. And,
I don't know.
And maybe bigger, because I do believe that, the Liberal government provincially was from, I think, 2003 to just last year, and there were a lot of different things we had to deal with as a result of that. So I feel like that really helped me to have a really kind of good understanding of what people feel and what we always found we got all the stuff that seemed like nobody wanted, like the like I say, things like wind turbines, and it was just dismissive. So, well, that's fine, you guys can have that. And there's a fairness piece to it too. And then that goes back to the amalgamation piece again. The South Niagara always tends to feel a little bit forgotten.
Left out, yeah,
right.
For sure.
And it's
There's
not
less
just
of
Wainfleet,
us.
it's Port Colborne, it's Welland. So we,
maybe even Fort Erie, maybe.
Oh yeah, for sure, absolutely. So that's where that's why I'm not a huge fan of amalgamation, because I think we'd be absorbed. But I won't go back into that.
No, that's okay.
But yeah,
so
that's what's kind of prompted me to.
This brings up something I didn't even. What's the role of MP? This is all just now being into real estate, because before real estate I didn't really follow it at all, and it's only because of being in real estate these things affect my life. So I'm starting to learn. I used to come to council meetings and stuff because I love Wainfleet stuff, but now I'm trying to understand the bigger picture. So MP, what does that? I don't even know what that means.
Yeah, and before I answer that, I wanted to say too. I remember the first time I met you was when you wanted to be on the Committee of Adjustment. Do you remember that? I thought you had applied. It was when I
remember applying.
And I remember you had more
hair.
Yeah, the hair was bigger back then. But I remember you being in the gallery, and I think we had quite a few applicants for Committee of Adjustment. But
I didn't get on.
No, sorry.
That's
no,
okay.
I don't know. Well, now look, hey,
yeah,
it's all good. You don't need to.
Yeah.
But no role of MP. So the MP is up in Ottawa. With the Prime Minister, and hopefully it will be my leader who will be the Prime Minister, Andrew Scheer, who's the Conservative leader.
See, I didn't even know this.
Yeah,
So okay, the people running for Prime Minister, that's already in place.
Yeah, so there's
this is
good.
I know
it's
nothing.
Great. I love
it. So I hope other people. I don't know what other people's level. I feel like I'm at the very bottom.
No, a lot of people don't. It's amazing when I go door to door. Like, some people are so clicked in and they follow it, and then some people are moderate, and some will vote, but they don't. They kind of, I think, go more with like what their family members are
Right.
doing, and then some just don't vote. Period, totally disinterested, or think the government is useless. And
Right.
we hear all kinds of
everything.
Yeah, and I respect. Like I've had people go, I don't vote, and I don't even try
Wow.
to.
See, I always vote, but I don't. I have to. I like learning all this stuff. I think that's in. I can't imagine it's just me just being educated on everything.
It's funny because I remember when I ran for mayor the first time, one of my girlfriends said, and we were all like in our kind of late 30s at that point, and she said, this is the first time I voted, and I voted for you. And I'm like, that's the first time I couldn't believe she hadn't voted.
Yeah.
And I think she only voted in those 2 elections and then the provincial election for me.
I find it's a little bit overwhelming because there's just so much. Like,
yeah.
I'm just learning. I realized that the Prime Minister that election is up in October, but this is the first time I've heard who's running. So who's running?
Yeah, so Justin Trudeau is the current Prime Minister.
Oh, so he's rerunning.
Yeah, so he's the leader of the Liberal Party and
the
Prime Minister. And then Andrew Scheer is the Conservative leader. So they would have had, so you have the parties and then they'll have their leader for so many times.
Gotcha.
Like so many elections, and if they can't, I guess, get elected, then eventually they resign, and then you have your party members. So like I'm a member of the Conservative Party, so we all get to vote on who the leader will be. And so Andrew Scheer, I think he's been the leader almost 2 years now.
Where is he from?
He is from out west, from Alberta.
Okay.
Yeah,
gotcha.
yeah. And he's young. He's only, I'm going to say 37, 38. Mm-hmm. And he's got 5 kids. So
is he Dutch?
I don't think so. No, I don't think Scheer's Dutch. I don't know what he is actually, but yeah. So he's younger because that's kind of the joke. Like Trudeau was the young leader for so long, and now Trudeau I think is 2 years older than me. I think he's 47 or 48, and now Scheer is quite a bit younger. And then the NDP leader is Jagmeet Singh, and so Jagmeet is, I believe, originally from Toronto area, and he was an MPP at Queen's Park in Toronto. So provincially, he was, and then he became the leader of the federal NDP, and he's been elected to a seat out west, I think in Burnaby. And then the Green Party leader is Elizabeth May, and they just got a seat out west. So I think she has her seat, and then they just got
you're in
another
a federal election.
Yeah, federal election.
This is Canada-wide.
Yeah.
This is amazing.
So it's been interesting because running provincially and talking about leadership races. When I got the nomination for MPP like last time, or for the MPP candidate, Patrick Brown was our leader, and then we had, I don't know if you followed that, there were some things that happened. And so then he ended up resigning, and then that's when we had, in the middle of an election, we had a whole leadership race, and so we had to vote on the new leader. And anyway, so it ended up being Doug Ford was the leader. So I went from thinking Patrick was going to be my leader, and he had a certain kind of style and way about him, and the way he was going to do the campaign and platform, and then we went to Doug. So that was a huge change. But now I was going somewhere with that, and it's okay. Gone.
No, it's okay because what you're talking about. I'm learning. This is all brand new. So you're part of the Conservative Party.
Yeah, like I'm a Conservative Party member. You could be a Conservative Party member, but I was the candidate.
Anybody that whatever you vote for is you're a member. See, like
you kind of you decide what party you think you would best belong to that aligns with your values, and then you can become a member and become involved, and eventually be a candidate if you want it. But I'm just saying, when you do the leadership races, like that's where you have to have a membership and then the whole party, so you can vote for who the leader is. So I ran in the provincial, and then Doug ended up being the leader. I did not get the seat here, but they went on to have their majority. Jeff Birch, so he's the NDP. Yeah, and it'd been NDP for I think now we're going on 44 years.
So you were trying to break the trend.
Yeah.
See, and this is something I didn't even know before. when you were running, I didn't realize NDP's orange, right?
Yes.
See,
yeah.
like
yeah. No, it's good.
yeah. So in that area, that's part of Welland. And what areas was that for?
So the Ride Niagara Center is South St. Catherine, so it's like Glendale and St. Paul kind of below, St. Paul West and Glendale below. It does kind of a little bit of a jig-jag on the map. Thorold, Port Colborne, and Welland. Yeah. Wainfleet was in the riding, and then in the last election, we got moved into Niagara West. So
and that's where Sam Mooserhoff.
Yep, Sam and Dean Allison is the federal MP. So Niagara Center used to be called the Welland riding, and I think it might have been a little bit different. But so that's where Mel Swart, Peter Cormos, they were the big NDP.
Right.
Yeah, like you hear people talk about them still at the doors.
So it's hard to break a trend like that.
Yeah.
Even though, from what I was following the little bit, I was seeing you more. And I didn't, I follow so little, I didn't even know that NDP was known there forever.
Yeah, no.
I thought you were going to win. And then after I heard that, it was a really big challenge because that area is just NDP forever.
Yeah.
I didn't even, these are all things I'm learning.
Well, they, in fairness to Jeff, he got the nomination.
That was the winner.
Yeah, pretty close to the actual election. I'd had the nomination for a long time, so I was more visible because I was out. And so he got the nomination, I think, in March, and then the election was June 7th. But I think I lost by about 3,000 votes. So I think we did the best I think anybody had done in that stretch. It was close. At one point, I remember we were watching it, and for maybe 4 minutes on CH News, I was actually ahead, and then I wasn't. But so that was kind of exciting. But but I knew it was going to be a tough one to beat.
So you learned a lot over that.
Yeah.
So the little I know, I have a lot of props, respect that after going at that, it not working out, you're still going. I love that.
Well, it's funny because I ran into, Benoit Mercier was the Liberal candidate in the provincial election, and the Liberals really tanked in that last election, and that wasn't too surprising, but it certainly wasn't Benoit's fault. Benoit's a good candidate, he's bilingual, and he's done a lot of work I think up at Queen's Park, and he's a retired teacher and just a really nice man. I was really glad to get to know him during the campaign. But he said that to me. I saw him yesterday, and he goes, wow, kudos to you to, we just finished that election, and now you're going, right back at it. But I kind of looked at it I might as well just keep going. Right. I was still pretty pumped. It was fun. Some people, I've been told stories, some people will run and lose and say, I will never do that again.
Right.
But I find it fun. Now, having said that, knock on wood, I don't know what's going to happen this election, but I had to go through a lot, with the leadership change and everything in the last election. And it was tough being the mayor and then running in a different riding, essentially.
Right.
Even though Wainfleet had been in it for years, technically they weren't out yet, but they were being moved into Niagara West. So
that made it harder.
Well, I didn't want to have anything happen where I embarrassed Wainfleet or because it was you have to, I don't know, there's just so much going on.
Your intentions are good. You're not going to embarrass.
Right. And I just so it was.
If Wainfleet was included, you might have won.
Yeah, I think I probably would have.
Because 6,500 people, not everyone votes, but.
Right. Yeah, and Wainfleet's typically blue. Wainfleet typically votes blue. Yeah,
I like the color reference.
Yeah, yeah, that's
wow.
Yeah, so I would have won. It would have been probably pretty close, but I think I probably would have. So that's and that's. I take that
you do a lot of door knocking.
Yes.
When this is something that I want to do more for my business that I don't do, I feel enough of. And the little bit of times I've done it, it is enjoyable. I find even the people that say I don't want to talk to you or whatever, it's fine because I don't. That part of my business is rejection. Same, I'm sure, with yours. But when do you do it? Like, do you do it every week? Or?
Yeah, we're out. I never go alone. I went alone a few times last time, and then someone said, "Don't go alone. Like, you never know." I mean, like I say, I really feel we're in a safe. I mean, Niagara's safe, but yeah, they said it's just always good to have someone with you. So sometime, actually, now we're getting a lot more volunteers. So, and we have a lot of young people too, which is really cool. Yeah,
that's awesome.
We had 2 guys out with us the other day, and they said they must have been asked 5 different times if they were my sons, and I thought, yeah, they did kind of look like my kids. So we were in Port Colborne, so people know who I am more. But we're out definitely 2 to 3 times a week, maybe even more. Yeah. And if I could go every day, all day, I would, but I can't. I've got the photography business, and I sit on several boards now since I've been not the mayor. So
which boards?
I am on the Niagara Children's Center board, so I've been on that 3 years. So I was on that when I was mayor.
And that is?
It's in Thorold and over by Brock, and it's for children, like therapy for children with disabilities. And they've been, for so many, I don't know how many years, but they're very well known in the area, and they do fantastic work. And we've had kids from Wainfleet that have really, really benefited from the programs that they offered. I don't know if you know Ryan Boros. He went to school with my kids, and he's amazing. The kid is brilliant, and he's actually going through at Carleton to be a lawyer now.
Oh, nice.
But he used their services, so he's kind of what inspired me to get active on that board. Yeah. And then I'm on the Welland Heritage Council board in Welland and the Multicultural Center. So they deal with like immigration and multiculturalism in the community. And then I am on, I can't even think, that's terrible. Port Colborne Wainfleet Chamber of Commerce.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so I like that. Like, I was always involved as mayor, but now they bring the businesses together in the community, and they do different events, and they try to, help, like they have their business directory. And then actually Dolores Fabiano, who's the executive director, we actually kind of amalgamated the 5 chambers a few years ago. So let me think here. Welland Pelham, Port Colborne Wainfleet, Fort Erie, and Niagara Falls. So the 4 chambers are all kind of amalgamated, and they're the South Niagara Chamber of Commerce. And so that's who I was at the cross-border trade workshop. I was there with Dolores on, I guess that was Thursday. So they have different things, like Vic Fideli, the finance minister, came down last Thursday, and they put on an event where he came and he spoke, and we could chat with him for a bit. So
that's cool.
Yeah. So
this is for businesses.
Yeah,
like I've never gone to this. I've heard.
Yeah, actually, it wouldn't be a bad idea for you to maybe look into. They have their business after 5s, and you don't have to be. You don't have to be a member to go to those. And then they do their Lobster and Laughs every year at Whiskey Run. So do you know? Oh, it's in.
That's okay.
I think it's the end of June this year.
So I should sign up if Lobster and Laughs sounds great to me.
It's awesome. They have comedians. You and I were talking about our friend Joe Crawford before we started, and Joe, I don't know if he'd be there this year, but he has been there in the past. I remember. So they have Lobster and a comedian. End of June. I'm going to write that down so I can. No, it's good, that. And you'll recognize all kinds of people there from the community. Yeah. What else? Oh goodness. Oh, the United Way Niagara. So the United Ways across Niagara amalgamated, and it was actually, I don't know if you... Is that a charity? Yeah, United Way is kind of the overarching charity across Canada, but and then they have kind of their umbrella of charities kind of below them that make application for funding. So United Way has their annual campaign every year with a goal of what to fundraise. And so, some of the charities that make application are like Big Brothers, Big Sisters, and I'm trying, there's so many. Lots. Yeah. So they amalgamate it, and I don't know if you know Faye Owen from Wainfleet, but Faye, Janie Kitchen, Faye's, anyway, okay. Faye's older. She used to be on our committee of adjustment. always hugely involved in the community, and she reached out to me just as I was wrapping up as mayor and said, do you want to, I was asked to be on this, but I don't have time. Would you like to be on it? And I was like, yeah, that's great.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so there's some, the president of Brock is on the board, and a few people.
You're busy.
Yeah, I know.
Thanks. I even more appreciate you being here.
It's crazy. Yeah.
Seriously.
Yeah. I love serving the community, and I'm so glad. Maybe I took on a little bit too much after, but
This is good.
But I kind of did it backwards because I had been community oriented a little bit because my kids were little. So I was involved in St. John Ambulance.
And you said they're 19?
19 and 16 now.
Sorry. Yeah.
So I've been involved in St. John Ambulance. I was their secretary of the Welland branch, and then I was involved in Therapy Tales Niagara with my dog, who's now passed away. I have another dog, but she's far too hyper to be a part of that right now.
Right.
But other than that, I wasn't involved in a whole lot. Then I became mayor. Then I learned
out of nowhere, mayor.
Yeah. That was an exciting night when we pulled that off. I
love it.
Yeah, that was. I think a lot of people were quite surprised by that. That's like 9 years ago now. I can't believe it.
That's wild.
It is wild. It's wild to see kind of where I've landed. But I say I kind of did it backwards because I became mayor, and then I learned about all these different agencies. So I'd think to myself, if I'm not mayor again, I'd like to be involved in this and this and this. So that's basically what I did, and so it's fun. Like I say, I love being involved in the community. And now I had Frank DeWright asking me, Frank, right? Yeah, asking me to be on the Wainfleet Fair, and I gotta get back to him. That was a while ago. So
he asked me too, and I haven't committed either.
Yeah, I know. We're the only ones with a really good fair. We are. Yeah. We are. People love our fair.
The Saturday night is great. I was just talking to Glenn Oosterhoff. He puts on, I think, the tractor pull and that stuff. Yeah. The fair is a great time.
I know and I shouldn't say that because Welland, they're trying to revive the exhibition, and I think they're actually doing it in June. So they actually had their rodeo, and I think they do a tractor pull too. But I think they've had trouble with their numbers because they do it. It was always historically that weekend in September, and then it would rain. So I see, I know that they've tried different things, and
they're doing it next month.
Yeah, but they're also a bigger venue as well. Yeah. But they say for the small hometown fairs, we do very well. Yeah.
The 2 nights there, Friday and Saturday, when everybody's there, those are fun nights. Everybody's out there.
Well, the Demolition Derby is I was just telling somebody about it, and they're like, really? And I said, oh, you have to come out, especially when it's when it's a really nice night and the sun's setting and there's all the dust and smoke, and from a photography perspective, it's always really cool.
Good spot for some photos.
I
like that.
Yeah. So So we went in a totally different direction than you.
No, I love it. I had these things prepared. We touched on some of them. One thing you sniped it already that I gotta bring up.
It's like radar.
I gotta the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority.
Yes.
It's been, I don't know how long. It almost feels like since the market was on fire. I've seen a lot of stuff going on with them.
Yeah.
A lot of controversy. And even before, I don't even know what points I want to touch on. But we've talked a little bit. When you're mayor, you're part of regional council.
Yes.
And then because weren't you part of the conservation?
Yeah, I was. So the way
because I don't understand all this stuff. There's so many things.
The way it has been structured is so the mayor gets elected, and then I'm not sure for the other municipalities. But anyway, I kind of had the first right of refusal. So historically, I get to the region, and then you start deciding what committees you want to be on.
Right.
And the MPCA was one of them. And historically, the mayor had always sat on that. So Barb Henderson, before me, was the member representing Wainfleet. Before that, Gord Harry, he was actually the chair for a while. And I'm pretty sure Stan had sat on it as well. And it was interesting when I was first elected in 2011, I actually had 2 or 3 people reach out to me trying to convince me not to sit on it because they wanted to sit on it.
Oh.
But then
within the township.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
township residents. But then in consultation with other people at that time, I was kind of, cautioned like, well, those people might have specific things they want to see happen at
Right.
the MPCA that, might benefit them in some way.
And less the community.
And they said, so there were some local farmers who I became, good friends with, and they would advise me on agricultural issues because I never professed to know a lot about agriculture, although now I feel like I
know more.
Well, I know more, for
For
sure. So they wanted to, they really wanted me to be the rep on the board, and they were really good at telling, giving me kind of their perspective on things, because agriculture is the main thing in Wainfleet. Right. So if things are happening, right, at any level of government that are impacting agriculture, that was kind of one of my main priorities was, how is this impacting them in any way? And one of the big things that we dealt with in Wainfleet with the Conservation Authority was the floodplain mapping issue, right, which you're probably familiar with.
I've heard.
Yeah. So it was early in my time on the MPCA, the staff at the time wanted to redraw the maps, the flood lines for the Welland River. And right, they had like a guy who was doing some sort of I don't even know, from a university, and so it's complicated to get into it, but anyway, he was the one who drew the lines, and some of our local people said, wait a minute, that doesn't seem right, because what the end result was that they would have to extend the lines out so far that it would really limit a lot of what people could do on their property.
Right.
So it didn't just impact Wainfleet, it impacted West Lincoln, even up kind of toward Hamilton, Welland, and even into Niagara Falls.
This is to do with the river.
Yeah, the Welland River. And then
not the lake.
No, not the lake.
Okay.
Well, but I mean, yeah, in some way because and then that's a whole conversation about drainage in Wainfleet, because
right,
because we have such a complicated, really big drainage network in Wainfleet, and I think 2 or 3 of the drains outlet into the lake, but the rest get moved all across the township, and then they end at Big Forks Creek. That's kind of where
right,
they bottleneck, and then move out into the Welland River. So that was one of the things that also concerned the farmers, was the impact on the drainage system
right,
in Wainfleet. So the big thing was that OPG in the falls will back the river up, depending on what they're doing with producing power.
Ontario Power
Generation. Yeah. Yes. And I still don't understand all the complexities of it, but at first people were saying, like, you'd have local people say the river flows backwards, and people would say, the powers that be would say no, and then finally they admitted, well, yeah, we do kind of push the water back.
Right, I've heard this too.
Yeah, and so the thought was that, are you redrawing these lines because you're going to be planning to push more water back? And I mean, I don't know if that was necessarily the case, but I think it was the lines were done in haste, and there wasn't a consideration for property owners. So you'd have guys like Jim Farr saying, I've lived here 50 years and I've never seen the river, I was going to say the lake, the river come anywhere near that. And some of the Pelham residents over kind of across Kitty Corner to the 2x4, they were involved as well.
Right.
And they actually staked the property when it got really wet to show, like, look, the water is not going.
So this flood mapping's been completed.
I don't know where it is. It was not completed. We were almost done with it by the time I finished up. So now it's the new board. So they have the interim board at the MPCA right now. So I haven't seen anything in the paper about it. So I'm not sure.
Does the feeder canal get affected by this at all?
I don't think so. I don't
even know the exact course, because I'm working on a property right now and where MPCA plays a role in this boundary adjustment is the floodplain mapping. It's the first time that it's come up in one of my, and this is good hearing about how it works. So it's not finished yet.
No, and they also have mapped drains and things too. Like they mapped a drain down, and we didn't even know about it. Like a drain down by the Port Colborne Wainfleet border, Highway 3, and then that impacted a business there. They actually had to move everything that they were doing over to a different corner of the property because this drain had been mapped. I don't know if it was like one of our official drains or more of a natural drain. Like there's all these kind of moving parts with this stuff. But
did you realize before getting as mayor this would be like, I've never thought about drainage before, really.
I did, and I tried to learn as much as I could before I was elected, but it really, and I'm a hands-on learner too. I do better learning as I go.
Same.
So I've learned, I mean, I know far more than I did 9 years ago, but yeah, the flow, I didn't realize how the flow of water is so important, whether it's on your personal property or what, your neighbor does that can impact your water. And
I don't even have my final grading done here, so I get it that I'm waiting on just getting this done, but a whole township, and we've got a big area.
No, it's flat and it's marshy in spots. So but we seem. I'd be curious to know right now how they're doing because we've had so much rain, and I know that I saw Mayor Junkin on Thursday night, and I said, or maybe it was Wednesday night, but I said, because he's a cash crop farmer, and I said, have you planted yet? And he said, no. He said, we need like 4 days of dry before
just to start.
Just to get started. So I'd be curious to see how the drainage department is doing. But that was always one of our priorities was making sure the drainage was because it's so
it's a huge thing. Because the farmers I've been talking to, I don't think anybody's put any crops out yet. And what's today? We're mid-May. So we're running tight on corn, even getting in the fields this year. Hopefully it can happen. I don't know.
I remember one year, I think it was 2011 or 2012, where they were really late. I don't know why I remember that, but it was June before they were planting. But they're right on that kind of deadline that they have to. I saw a guy disking a field on highway.
Oh, wow.
Nice. Few days ago on Highway 58, so it would have been like well into just before you get into Wainfleet, and it was just muck. Like I would imagine he didn't finish it. Like it was just muck coming up underneath, and so, and that's like, it's a big gamble for the farmers. Like they go through a lot because a lot of stuff is out of their control. So
the weather is huge. MPCA.
Okay, so I was talking.
Something I learned here too. I don't even understand the structure of it, so maybe just a quick understanding of that. So there's a C something.
There's the CAO, and then there's the staff, but then there's a board that governs, and a lot of
the board that you were.
That was the board that I was on, and so we represented. There were representatives from the 12 municipalities, and then also from. There was a representative from Haldeman, like Dunnville, Cayuga, out that way.
Yeah.
And then two representatives from Hamilton.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because the watershed involves them as well. And so
how big's the board?
So it'd be 14 people.
So that's the mayors.
It's the rep. It can be, or it can be appointed citizens, and then that's where with all the controversy surrounding the MPCA, and having the audit.
Is that where it comes from?
Now there's a big.
Some of it?
Well, it was that representation seemed to be okay for quite some time, but then in this last term, that's when things were kind of turned upside down. So then people started to question the composition of the board and should it be politicians, because there was a sense that things had become too political. And then we had the Auditor General come in and audit, and my takeaway, one of the big takeaways from her was that when we're there, we're not necessarily representing the interests of the municipality that we're coming from. We're representing the interests of the MPCA as a whole. And I thought, wow, and I know the Mayor Wellen, we had said the same thing. Wow, we really thought we were there, to
represent.
With this floodplain mapping issue.
Right.
We even had an issue where the MPCA wanted to one of the turbine companies made requests to use part of the Gord Harry Trail to run their trucks down until they had the turbines built, and of course people weren't happy about that, and I said no way, I don't want that, and they ended up approving it, and then they brought the trail back to to better than what it was apparently, but that was really controversial. And so, in my mind, people were mad, and I was there, and we don't we don't appreciate that. So now moving forward, they have this interim board, and they just actually found out that there could be even more members on the board. There was a ruling, so I think Niagara could have something like up to 27 members on the board, which is too much, and I don't think anybody's saying that should be the case. But
is this volunteer?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, you get like a little per diem, and you get mileage, but that's it. So it's relatively volunteer.
See, I'm understanding the structure a little bit more, because I'll make a couple comments on it. So with the conservation in my business, anything that requires development or any changes, the biggest question mark always tends to be what's the conservation going to be say? What are they going to say? Because when going through a variance, or I don't even know, anything, it tends to be that we have to talk to the township when dealing with Wainfleet. We have to talk to the region, and then the MPCA. And it is an overwhelming amount of times everybody's always worried what the conservation is going to say. Because at some point they have a conversation with somebody at township before any meetings or anything. But it's always like, what is the conservation going to do about this? And everybody, I don't want to say everybody, and I don't want to use the word scared either. But it's the big question mark, and it seems, I don't even know, the role of the conservation, I guess, is to protect stuff. It's got to be.
Yeah, and they do a lot of on behalf of the province. They're regulating on behalf of the province a lot of the things that they weigh in on, like in Wainfleet, bad habitat, and I don't know, just anything to do with water. Some stuff is more federal, but I can't even think offhand, like different kind of species at risk, things like that.
See, the biggest thing I've learned too, is with the conservation, the first thing that I learned about it is trees, like over, if you can see here, the bush is considered wetland.
Yeah, I was gonna say wetlands and woodlots too are the
see that I always, that was one of the first interesting things I really learned in real estate from anything, was bush was considered wetlands, and it has nothing to do with being wet. Regardless, but what I find is trees are really highly protected, because once deemed wetlands, the conservation's gives a really hard time with any expansion of like a building or doing a development or anything. Trees seem to really be high on the protection list.
And do you know what the irony of that is? And I just said it, I was on 610 a couple days ago, is that when they put in the wind turbines, the big project, that was split. We only had a few of them, but West Lincoln took the brunt of it. They cut down, I think it was upwards of 10,000 trees between West Lincoln and Wainfleet. And Richard Nan, our director of operations for the township, that man needs an award, because he was on them, making sure that and trying to negotiate to, some of them were 100-year-old trees, and trying to save them. And I mean, there was the promise that they'd give us saplings to plant in place. But I mean, and they'd give us 3 saplings if it was an older tree. But I mean, that's going to take,
years.
And so when everybody, I just see things sometimes, and people are going on about trees, and absolutely, I don't want to see things being paved over or bulldozed, but at the same time, and I actually had a lady email me once giving me heck about something to do with environmental, and I said, where were you when we she said, well, no, I know. Her response was, no, we were quietly trying to, but like with the, and I guess it's because the wind turbines are considered, maybe it's a sacrifice that because it's clean energy, but our argument always was we have Niagara Falls and we have that that clean energy already in our region, and it's one of the big things that makes our region so amazing. But yeah, just when you brought up the trees, that's a real bone of contention with me, because we couldn't even get like the media wound up about it or anything. There were a couple articles, but
not much.
It was and when you drive out like Wellandport way, the real kind of far end of Wellandport, like the northwest portion of the township, like you'll see where, it really changed the way things are. But yeah, wetlands and then the buffer zones can be really limiting, because I know we had an instance, somebody out on Lakeshore Road I think they'd sold a lot to somebody, and then they were going to build, and they couldn't adjust that line because of the wetland, the boundary. Right. And then they came upon a bad habitat, or there was a concern there was a bad habitat, and I forget what happened, but the guy who was actually building was panicking because something had got lost in the mix, and we had that happen. Like, people would have these plans, they were gonna build something or do an addition, and then they'd find otherwise that it wasn't gonna be, like, it's difficult to build in the country. I'm sure you've picked up on that. Like, it's definitely not easy. There's a lot of sacrifice
this is something I wasn't thinking, but if we're gonna be talking about it, this is in Wainfleet. We had that meeting recently. I think it was called Open Forum, or
about the budget.
Yes,
yeah.
The budget.
Yeah.
This wasn't even on my list of things, but this is interesting. We're talking about this because what got brought up was property taxes getting raised and Wainfleet's finances. Mm-hmm. Now, a lot of people being in real estate that I talk to says an easy way to help make that up is with new development. But as we both know, this is a topic in Wainfleet is development.
Yeah.
I don't even know. Like, it's hard to build, but then there's all kinds of perspectives here. There's people that say, let's not grow Wainfleet at all. Mm-hmm. And then we run into the challenge of, well, we have costs and we need some money. And then I don't think that there's anybody so far on the other end that says we want to be Toronto and we want condos and we want... No. But then there's people all along the middle of saying different developments, and I don't even know where I want to go with this, but one of the things maybe is if we need more money, how do we get more money in Wainfleet?
My thing had always been, so yeah, some people think we need more development and then we'll increase the tax base and it'll be more tax money. But then there was always an argument that, yes, but with those increased residents comes more people using the arena and the library, and more people traveling our roads, which means they need more maintenance and more fire service, and so it's kind of relative. As it increases, also the service expectation increases as well. Whether that's entirely true or not, I'm not sure, because we haven't seen
this is just what people are.
An explosion of growth. I always thought, I'm a huge small to medium business person. I think, especially and not just in Wainfleet, but all across the region, because everybody longs for the days of big industry, and it would be fantastic if. And I'm not not opposed isn't the right word, but I haven't ruled out that might not happen, but I don't see that happening a lot right now. And so I've always said and that was part of the reason why I ran provincially, was because of all the red tape that kind of strangled, business owners, and then seeing it too in what you and I were talking about, home building and everything. I could see that if each business increased a little bit to employ 1, 2, 3 more people, we could solve the unemployment issue. Now, since I've said that, we're actually in a bit of an employment kind of gap. Like, I've heard people say that we actually have more jobs available and not the skilled people to fill them. So
I feel that myself.
Yeah, so I've heard that. But going back to Wainfleet, I always thought that if we could... we have a lot of businesses that people don't even realize, because the municipality geographically is so huge. Yeah. And then, you travel, I canvassed it twice, and you travel down these back roads, and all of a sudden there's this guy, with manufacturing kitchens or a trucking company and they have such a huge piece of property. Yeah. Radiant Tube heaters and all these things. So if we could make things easier for our businesses to thrive, then they could expand, and then that would be more tax money. So
how tax money? How do you?
Well, because if they're expanding, then their assessment would change, and even things like development charges, which isn't a popular thing with people, and I get it. But all that stuff would.
I'm just trying to think how, because we need more money. So this is through small business growth.
Well, like if you put an addition on your house, then you're going to be reassessed and your taxes are going to go up. So our thinking was with businesses, if they could expand, that would be the same thing. There would be an increase in taxes, but they're not necessarily putting a lot of strain on the municipality. So we went out and we started several years ago going and visiting all the different businesses, whether they were little.
That's awesome.
And it was great. And we got some good ideas, and we did start and we got suggestions too that weren't even related to businesses necessarily. Like people also are residents, so they gave us a lot of suggestions. So that's where we came up with our Welcome to Wainfleet pamphlet. I don't know if you've seen that, but like sometimes we've heard stories where people move here and then after 6 months they call the township and say, "Where's my water bill?" And it's like, I know, but they don't realize it. I'm thinking, doesn't your real estate agent? I don't know, but so we had like a list of things in our fire services and all that.
Cool.
But then we were working on.
That's cool.
And they were in the middle of it when I left, working on like a business directory for Wainfleet. And even like people said we should have a farmer's market. And I can't take any credit for it because it actually was an initiative from the Meridian, but they did start, their farmer's market.
Yeah.
And so, we got some good ideas. So I don't know if current council's going to, continue with that or not, but that, so we didn't get as far as I had hoped, but that was always my thinking. If we don't want to grow, then let's take these businesses. I mean, there's a guy who fixes instruments, like really neat, and I don't think he really wants to expand, but
there's a lot of cool businesses going on.
Yeah,
for sure. I've noticed that too.
Well, it was Joe Hilbing too who got me thinking about it. Like we are actually conveniently located. Like Joe said, when he tells people coming from the GTA where he is, he says exit Victoria and come straight up Victoria.
Straight up,
he says they don't necessarily realize it's going to be 25 minutes, but it's a straight shot. Yeah. So
it's
it
easy
does
to find us.
It does make us pretty conveniently located.
Yeah. So that's interesting. I really like that theory. I'm still thinking about how we can raise more capital in Wainfleet, because I like that theory, but that's a tough one.
Yeah.
Because I think, number one, with myself, I'm trying to build a team myself to help me, because I am having a hard time keeping up with my business, which is a good problem. But even if I start building a team, that's not going to really help Wainfleet at all, because it's, well, number one, even if wherever we're working from, it's not going to produce more money for Wainfleet. If anything, it's going to be more income tax, but Wainfleet doesn't see that money.
Well, Wainfleet gets different funding from federal and provincial levels of
bit?
Yeah, they'll get, like, they actually, Mayor Gibson was telling me they got a big increase. I think it was the municipal partnership funding. So when I became mayor, that was actually cut substantially. But then I think they were getting something like $600,000. So, and that's from the provincial government. And then I think it's the federal gas tax. We get money there. So it does get flowed around. But one of the other things that I had always suggested too was, so you're mentioning the Conservation Authority, and like I said, they're kind of a window for the province, and they regulate on behalf of the province. And so, the province, and that may change now with the new government, but when it was the Liberal government, provincially was government, they would, it was kind of the sense that I got, that a municipality like Wainfleet, they wanted us to say rural, agricultural, not a whole lot of development, because, we had been designated so many areas, wetlands. And so, and I used to say, that's fine, but then give us something, because you can't tell us to be this huge municipality and don't build any houses. but then expect us to maintain all our roads
That's
and
so
have an
challenging.
arena for people and have yeah. So then some people would say, well, that's why you should amalgamate, but I disagree. I don't think we'd be better off. And we and we've done well over the years, not even like not just our council but all the councils, with being very careful with the budget and not having, a lot of municipalities have high debt, and Wainfleet doesn't, and
that's good. Yeah, I don't even know our books at all.
No, and I'm not sure where they, because I know there was the purchase of the for the new fire hall, and which was necessary, absolutely, but nice. So there are
I like that project too.
No, that's really exciting. I know we couldn't get there, but sometimes it just takes a new group, and I think we did other really good things, but the fire hall, we just kind of,
there's so many things going on. It's so crazy. Like when I think a lot of people think of Wainfleet, that there isn't a lot going on, but even there's a lot going on.
There is.
Yeah.
Sometimes the smaller municipalities tend to have the bigger issues because things aren't. We don't have these big coffers. Well, I don't think a lot of municipalities have coffers full of money, but we just seem to have
we don't have a lot of money
and
for such a big area.
Yeah,
it's little. Yeah.
And we don't have a lot of staff, as much as I know people think that there is, but to deal with if something comes down from the province or something from the region that we have to deal with, it's people there are working, doing 2 or 3 different things at one time. I was going to say, one of the things that as a council I was proud of, and I think my former fellow council members would agree, was how we ended up over the last few years upgrading the arena, and we did it incrementally. And again, Richard Nan was phenomenal. Like that man treats Wainfleet like his own business, and
I like it.
And a lot of the staff.
I don't know if I've ever really talked to him.
Oh, he's great. He's great. Yeah, and
maybe I'll have him one day and talk to him.
Yeah. Oh, he's fantastic. Yeah, and he really worked hard to because it was one of those things where once you kind of opened up some stuff, it's like a renovating a home, and then you go, oh my gosh, and then then this is wrong, and then so some days I'd see him and he doesn't have a lot of hair, and he'd be running his hands through what little hair he had, but at the end of the day, we kind of got to where we want it with the arena, and we had lots of compliments on it, but I think it goes to kind of where we are in this day and age. We have a lot of poverty in this area and like in Niagara and in Ontario, and yet we're building big things. And I'm just reading a book about that right now, from like, it was written in the 20s or 30s, but when there's all this poverty, and yet we're building these big fancy things. So, and that was the way we looked at it. Like, we can't really afford as a township to build like a big new arena, and the township was like, the residents were pretty clear when we were entertaining the idea of doing a big addition. They were totally against it. But yeah, because I watch that now, and sometimes I think, like, across the region, I'm not talking Wainfleet now, but that we have our priorities kind of mixed up. We have to, we have to.
Are you okay on water there?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. Right. Build new infrastructure and keep up on what we have, but sometimes I just think it's backwards, and then even with contracts and things end up costing far more than they should have, and then it becomes a scandal, and the whole Burgoyne Bridge thing, and then people are so furious because it's taxpayer money that it's their money that's being spent in a haphazard way. So I kind of got off track there. But that's
and two things have come up here that I find interesting since now, because like you, I'm learning a lot more now that I'm out more and talking to a lot more people with my business, everything. And something I found interesting to tie two kind of things is I found that when talking to a lot of people, and I don't know how you sit with this, but I'll tell you how I see. A lot of people, the things that they don't like, their voices are louder. Mm-hmm. So I find you tend, because we both know with different things that there's always backlash. Any decision, anything, as mayor, you make a decision, you're making people happy, you're making people not happy.
Yeah.
But I find that the loudest voices are the people that aren't happy. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't mean they're the majority.
Right.
And I'm not saying you ignore these people. I would never say that. But it's really, I find this interesting that people against things, you hear more. And then with anything in the township, I'm gonna reference this more with the township. I hear a lot of complaints or whatever, and then when I'm out there in the trenches talking to people, a lot of people have different perspective than what's the overlying, whether it's in the media or wherever. And it's really interesting. That's why with door knocking, I really find that in the trenches work interesting, because then you get to see the different perspectives. Because just because you're hearing people's complaints doesn't mean that's the overwhelming thought of an area.
Yeah.
Right. And a lot of people sit back and either don't voice their opinion, and that's what I found really interesting too when I did those interviews. I actually want to do more of that, because I really found it interesting just hearing from different people. And I don't even remember if I aired another time, because one of the things that people were bringing up was when I was interviewing about cannabis coming to Wainfleet at the Beervendale, was while you're talking to people that a lot of them are going to buy booze and you're not really getting it's kind of skewed. So then I did it again at the arena, and it was a little bit different, but I think the numbers maybe went a little bit the other way. But it's just, I find it interesting that the loudest voices are not always the majority.
Right, yeah.
And you must find that, and I'm not saying that's always the case.
Well, and sometimes it's hard because it's hard to decipher that sometimes, because, you know, I've had instances where I've thought, oh no, about an issue, and then I've had a couple groups say that they're not the loudest, or they're not a majority, and then I'm thinking, well, I kind of trust these people who are advising me, but you almost have to go with your gut on it, and really gauge. I always found a good indicator was who showed up to council. Like, you had your usual people who would come to pretty much every council meeting, and then you had the people that would come out if they were mad, and they were usually the same. But then, you know, there were certain issues where you'd see somebody who normally never said anything, and you'd see 3 or 4 of those people, and then that's when I'd start to go, this could be an issue, because I've never seen, you know, Joe Smith or whoever standing in the back of the gallery, and so that was always interesting. And who's reaching out via email, and
see, that's one thing that I had written down here. I'll touch on it because we've covered a lot, but is I imagine as being mayor, one of the things, so I really love this, because us have talked quite a few times, but never this long.
No, I know.
So that's why I was really looking forward to this, because I've always enjoyed every time we've gotten together, even that Musty Monday. That was probably the longest we ever spent together.
Yeah. That was fun. That was when you were first doing that,
just
too,
getting,
right? Because I have these 2 kids canvassing with me, and I shouldn't say kids, I mean, they're young adults. Right. And I mentioned that I was coming here, and they're like, we love that guy.
Really?
Yeah, and they're
That's
like,
awesome.
he just, the burger that you just did, and
awesome.
I said, I'm pretty sure I was one of his first videos. Yeah.
I don't remember exactly, but that was definitely in the beginning. Yeah. Because how I remember, too, is Carrie was our server, and I was giving her my phone.
Sabo, but
my Ether.
Yeah. She was Sabo because we went to high school together.
Right,
so,
and I was giving her the camera to film, or my phone to film.
Oh, that's right. Yeah,
and it wasn't even Robin or somebody else or anything. It was my phone. Well, but that was definitely one of the first ones. Which was awesome. But
sorry.
No, I like it. I always like it. It's great. One of the things I always seen. Not always, a bunch of times when we've seen each other in some kind of public thing, and often our conversations were cut short because somebody would come up to you with a concern of theirs.
Yeah.
I don't know, as mayor, you get to hear more of the tough stuff. I don't know. Do you hear more tough stuff than people saying like you're doing a great job? My job's kind of like that too. I'm constantly putting out fires.
Yeah. You definitely hear more the negative and the complaints.
Right,
and
that's got to be heavy on the shoulders.
Yeah. You know what? You get used to it, and it's unfortunate in a way though, because now I'm always prepared for the worst. So when the phone rings or something, even now, just as a candidate, like I'm always expecting something negative. You just
Right.
get used to the negativity,
Right.
And you
That's
get
challenging.
Yeah, and you get that thicker skin, and I think it almost just becomes a part of kind of who you are, and that's how you, or not who you are, but you look through that lens,
Right.
and you're ready for the negativity. Because if you get caught off guard, that's not necessarily a great thing. But yeah, like I would get stopped in the grocery store, and like most people are okay, but you get the odd
Yeah.
person who was mad about something and they'd want to talk in the grocery store, or not even mad at me or counsel, but mad about a different
Yeah.
issue, and
Yeah, of course.
follow me out when I'm putting my groceries in, and they're still standing there talking. But again, it becomes part of your life, and that's public service. And
Right.
sometimes I think some people go into public service and they think, well, that's not going to happen to me, or it's going to be different, and it's not. And you have to know that
Right.
everything you say and do and could potentially be scrutinized.
Yeah,
like
for sure.
even when I walk my dog down the road and I've stopped and talked to somebody, I'm always thinking that in the back of my mind.
Yeah.
I remember years ago, my son wanted a dirt bike, and he kept saying, I'll walk it up the street and then I'll ride it. And I'm like, absolutely not. And he was so mad. He was younger, and he said, that's just because you're the mayor. You don't want me to have...
Disrupt the neighbors.
And I said, pretty much. But then I said, no. I said, I don't think I'd allow it anyway. But yeah, so I think maybe they had, they kind of...
Right.
Yeah, they dealt with it as well. But actually, one point I wanted to make, they went to St. Elizabeth. That's one awesome thing about, being in a smaller area. They went to St. Elizabeth's, and we were already kind of well established. Oh, and that's where you went, right?
Yes.
So
yeah.
we were already kind of well established there as a family. And they never came home and said, so-and-so said that their parents think you're an idiot, or nothing.
That's
that
good.
was, because
Nice.
other mayors from other parts of the region, I would hear stories, and I always felt so fortunate. We just the kids never had to
That's good.
deal with that.
Yeah, well, you're a good person, so this is good.
Thanks. Well, but it was the school, like it's that close knit,
Right.
and and I think maybe there's more. You can be like, they can be mad at the council for different things, but I think there was still that element of respect, for the family and anything. So
all of the stuff you did with Wainfleet as mayor, that's definitely got to help when you transition next. Like, because I when we meet, I would think, because a lot of people jokingly tell me one day you should run for mayor to me, and I don't know if I would or not, but anytime I'd be with you, I'm like, it's definitely not an easy thing. It might be enjoyable, but it's challenging, because I seen it, like,
it's tough. I think the biggest thing the toughest part is you're communicating and your messaging. So things can get twisted so fast, and there can be so like blatant untruths. And and I used to think, well, I'll get ahead of that and I won't let that happen. But there are times where it is just beyond your control.
Yeah, it's gonna happen.
Yeah, something is out there.
Yeah.
And that's it. It's done. And I hate to bring it up, but that development out at the lake, that was a prime example of people thinking that because of that, the township was going to increase by 30,000 people over the next 5 years. And
I seen that.
that was a couple years ago, and that was a tough couple weeks.
The population was going to go from 6,000 to
like 30,000.
Yeah.
I think that was the number, and in like a 5-year
that was just
period.
a misprint or something.
Yeah,
right?
it was a misprint on like a consultant report, and it got taken and
blown up.
Yeah,
I know. I see the people. I'm like, okay, this is not even possible. So it's okay.
Yeah. And so, and just I can't, that was the biggest one, but there were a lot of things, at that time that I was at Marshville volunteering on the Labor Day weekend, and a woman went walking by and she yelled at me and she said, I don't support the township growing to 30,000 people. And at that point, I was I was just tired. Right. So when I was done, I walked through and I found her, and we stood for about 5 minutes, and I explained, and she's like, nice. Oh, okay. Nice. Okay. And then it was fine. But you can't find every single person and explain to them.
See, communication's important one-on-one, and then I can only imagine when you're part of government, like getting messages out.
Yeah.
That's
And that's where social media is good, but then if you don't get it right, I don't know if you've come across that kind of stuff, but if you don't get...
I'm okay with making mistakes. I don't have a big weight on my shoulders because I'm representing, even though I work for a company, myself. So I don't have those worries of making big mistakes.
Yeah.
So just like the video I did yesterday, which I'm sure, I don't know, very few people. I did a video topless, which is I don't think a lot of people do that, but yeah, for sure messages can when you're putting out a bunch of stuff, people are gonna interpret it different ways, but government's tricky.
Yeah, it's just, you can say something the wrong way and it can be well intentioned and it can be turned, or again, people take misinformation but it is what it is, and it's part of this day and age too. Like, social media has so many advantages, but then it has and you're expected, like yourself in what you do, but especially politicians are expected to be kind of front and center on social media, but you have to be careful and and I mean, I'm not one, I don't comment on other people's things, but I wouldn't anyway. That's not my personality.
Right.
But Twitter is one that we do. I do have a Twitter account, but I don't. I just don't like Twitter. I just find Twitter. Yeah, I find Twitter
a lot of negative there.
Yeah.
See?
So we will start to use it more, as we get closer to the campaign. But I've always been more of a Facebook person. But that's because I'm a middle-aged woman, so I love Facebook.
Yeah.
But and Instagram's good too. But then that's more my photography thing.
You take some great pictures.
Thanks. Yeah. That's starting to get busy again too. Did a family photo yesterday in Welland, so that was fun.
Nice.
And got some stuff coming up. So we should do your headshots soon.
That'd be fun.
You could always have multiple headshots that you can use. I like you've got the clouds. It looks like you were superimposed on it. Yeah, that's a cool one.
Yeah.
That's very good. Very good.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah, I've done a few real estate headshots over the years. Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah.
One thing, not to go off that, but I find it interesting, techniques for politicians, because I don't know what it's called, smear campaigns. This isn't even on my list, but we're talking. Yeah. This is a common thing in politics, is to throw the other side under the bus. In real estate, I don't think we can do that.
No.
The rules.
I don't think we've even seen that. Does that go on?
I don't think we're allowed because we have a lot of marketing guidelines, tons. Mm-hmm. And I don't think I would ever take that approach. But that's something that is done. And not even just that. I don't even know. I don't know. I know so little about politics, and a lot of people have tried to get me to watch House of Cards.
Okay. Yeah, I've never seen it. But no.
That's interesting.
Yeah. I don't have time. I'm never home that night.
No doubt. I don't get to watch a lot of TV either, but I'm starting to actually have more of an appreciation for politics and stuff. Mm-hmm. And this, I really appreciate this because as enjoyable it is, I'm learning. Because there's so much stuff, and just I do a lot of marketing, so I find it interesting a little bit, the marketing of politicians, and the smear stuff is part of it. It's part of the game, right? I don't even know if you've partaken in it, and that's not even point here.
The the last campaign, so running for mayor of Wainfleet was different than running in a provincial or now a federal campaign. So when I made the move to run provincially, everybody said, "Oh, get ready, it's going to be ugly, and this is not like driving around to the houses in Wainfleet and a couple articles in the paper and that's it." And so I was really prepared for the worst, but we had. I think a lot of it comes down to the candidates, their character, and so I mentioned before, Jeff Birch is now the MPP, and Benoit Mercier was the Liberal candidate, and then Joe, I think it's Diaz, he was the Green candidate, and I'd never met him before, and they were all solid. And I remember our last debate was on the radio, and Benoit said...
Oh, a debate.
Yeah, we had...
Do you have any of those?
Yeah.
When's the next debate?
Oh, I don't know. It'll be probably maybe end of September.
I find that exciting.
There'll be maybe 3. There's usually one, Cogeco or Your TV does one. And then 610 has us on, and then there's usually one done by the Chambers of Commerce. So, and that's more
intense.
live. Yeah. Yeah, I
See,
mean,
that's
yeah.
I don't know. To me, I went to the Wainfleet one that they had. I don't. Did you
Yeah,
go through those?
Yep, we did. Yep, I did those.
Yeah.
Actually, so there was the first debate when I ran for mayor the first time, and I was so nervous.
I
It was
imagine,
awful.
because you
I
don't
remember
know.
saying my girlfriend drove me to the it was at Winger Church, and I said to her, I said, I feel like I'm like a lamb being led to slaughter, like because
Right.
I didn't know what to expect.
Yeah, of course.
And then she was so sympathetic, like she felt so bad for me, but I ended up actually doing. I was so prepared.
Nice.
And I ended up doing as well as I could for being,
Good.
brand new. And then the second election in 2014, we didn't have a debate, and people were really upset in Wainfleet. They said it really made it difficult
Yeah,
for them.
I think
And that
it's
was
great.
it's not up to the township to do that. That's up to local organizations, typically the Chamber of Commerce, to do that. And I don't think they had the resources that year, so they didn't do one. So then this time, I had said to the chambers, like, you need to make sure you do a debate in Wainfleet, because people were really upset.
It was a packed house.
I know. So no, I was there. It was good though. I thought it was really good, and different, just to see everybody's different styles and comfort level. And yeah.
See, and I'll tell you, this is awesome because these are things I wasn't thinking of. But
do you think everybody's going to watch this whole thing? We've been talking a long time.
I don't. Well, I don't. They're long, so this is new format. I don't. There will be people that make it to the end, but not a lot.
Yeah.
But one day I think people will come back.
No,
because
I feel like we're getting more interesting as we're going.
I find it really interesting. I love this. But I'll from my perspective again with the last one. So when the candidates were running, it was Ted Hessels, Richard Dykstra, Kevin Gibson, Ken Martin, and then the last gentleman.
Alfred Kears, or did you say him already?
Well, Alfred Kears.
Did you say Andrew Watts?
And Andrew Watts.
Yeah.
So I'm out in Wainfleet all the time talking to people, and it was really interesting to hear because what the overwhelming out there was, people were saying that they really thought it was going to be Dykstra or Hessels. It was like
who would be mayor?
Win,
yeah,
right. And a lot of people were saying they were writing off Kevin Gibson
because he didn't live in or wasn't born and raised here.
Well, just everybody I talked to. And this, I don't know if he'll watch or not or anything, but just my experiences. People didn't know who he was, and they said he was new to the area, so he was a write-off. It was like, and then he won, and by a landslide, and that shocked me from everybody I was talking to.
Yeah,
and then this is marketing and campaigning. I'm like, the guy did a great job campaigning somehow.
Yeah.
I don't know what he did.
Well, yeah, that's what I was going to say. So there were two things working to Kevin's advantage, and one was I think you had, I think like Alfred and Ted and Richard kind of all split that vote, and then but Kevin, I think because he's retired. And he went out, I know he did, he went out and he started early, like in August, and he just went out house to house. I don't think he got to every house. And he'd just go and talk to people and go sit in someone's backyard and have conversations with them. And I think part of it too was people were, I think 2 terms is usually pretty good for people. I shouldn't say that. I mean, some people are mayors or councillors for years, and people love them, and they're and they're really effective. But I think sometimes, people get the constituents get tired, and then they're like, you know what, enough. Like we want a change, and I felt that was the sense was. You know what? I think we need new people in there, and like. And
it was almost everybody new, right?
Yeah, except for Terry Gilmore.
Terry Gilmore's the only returning.
Yeah, and he'd only been on 1 term, so he's still semi-new. So so they were willing to give him another, crack at it, and then like Betty and I had decided to move on to other things, and so I think they felt like that they were ready, for a change, and I get that. So
he because this is what I found interesting too. Kevin at the time was not. And how should I refer to him? Kevin, Mr. Gibson, Mayor?
Oh, well, Mayor Gibson.
Mayor Gibson.
Yeah.
Mayor Gibson.
I think you can call him. I call him Kevin. That's.
He didn't. He said right on Facebook, social media, he was not going to not use it, but he's like, I'm not big on here. So that even people had seen that.
Yeah.
I was talking to people, and it was such a shock. He was door knocking hard. He had to have been.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
They say there's a saying like you win it at the doors, and I believe that because
that's awesome.
and it's a lot of work, but if you like people and you really do genuinely want to know what people have to say, like I had a great conversation yesterday, knocking on the doors in Thorold, and there was a woman, and she I know those keep falling, and so we started talking, and she had some concerns about the changes going on now with the provincial government. And then she said, I work for Ontario Works, which is like the social assistance program. And then I was fascinated because I wanted to know how, like I said, so how is it impacting? And so she started explaining how some of the changes being made, they trickle into other areas that you might not realize.
Right.
And there are some, what did she say? They were it was like a child tax benefit if you were on assistance, and that's been cut. So she said, but if you're in between, you're maybe finishing a job and then now you have to go on assistance for a while. And she said that payment can help you transition through, but it was really fascinating, having her explain it all, because I don't know. And these are the things that worry me when I hear about different things happening and the vulnerable, like we keep hearing about impacts to our vulnerable communities.
Right.
So I must have been at her door for 45 minutes, and the poor guy canvassing with me, he had done probably 20 houses, and I'm still standing there talking, but it was a good conversation.
Yeah.
And I think you either kind of have that as a candidate or you don't really.
Yeah, so I find this really interesting too, the door knocking, because this is something I've done so little of. Now, if you only have so much time and so many doors, so you can't talk to everybody 45 minutes.
No, and that's where you have good volunteers, and then they will come and interrupt if there's another resident who wants to talk.
So when you knock on a door, somebody else is knocking on another door.
Yeah, sometimes we have 5, 6, 7, 8 people with us, and then sometimes it's just me and another person.
Gotcha.
So yesterday it was just me and Eric, who's been helping, and so we knew we weren't going to get a whole lot accomplished, but like every little bit helps.
Yeah, of course.
And Eric speaks French pretty fluently, and I have a good handle on the language, and I'm trying to learn it more because there is
there's a presence.
There's a substantial Francophone community in Thorold, but really like a lot in Welland and in Port Colborne too.
Yeah.
And I think it's important if you're an MP to be able to speak French, because it's our second language. Yeah. So I thought, even if we don't get a whole lot accomplished, he and I yesterday said, okay, once we get going, we're only going to speak French to each other. So,
wow.
Yeah. So it was, I stumble, so it was good. So it's never kind of it never feels like it's a waste, even if we only have 2 hours. And if I get caught at a door, I still think it's worth it because I'm learning.
Yeah,
I'm getting that.
If anything, I would call that the trenches. When people say, what's going on, I'm always like just grinding out in the trenches, right?
Yeah.
And that's what you're in there. But how do you do that effectively? If you knock on the door, I don't know if you want to discuss like door strategy or not, but I would imagine sometimes it's really quick where they say, they you don't even have to talk to me because you got my vote. And sometimes, I don't know, people say beat it. Yeah. I'm sure.
Yeah. Some people say like just nope. They'll say no, and then they're not conservative, or they might not vote, or they just don't have time. Some will say no, I'm NDP, and then okay, no problem, and then.
And it's that easy. They don't even want to hear it.
No, and I don't know. I think some people might be of the mentality to try and convince them. But if you're telling me, no, I'm NDP or I'm Liberal, like that sounds to me like you've been that.
You've decided.
Yeah, your whole life, or at least for this election, you're pretty, certain of how you're going to vote. So I'm not going to stand there and people don't want me to. Like, they don't want me to stand there and argue with them. And then some people have questions, or some people aren't quite sure what they want to say, and so then we'll get into a conversation. And then some people are like, we've had a couple that are really irate, and I don't.
Really?
Yeah, I had one. yeah, it was really.
I imagine, yeah.
I've never had that, and I've knocked on a lot of doors. But as soon as I said conservative, he went like, was just livid. To the point where I was a little bit scared. Like I said, okay, and I
it was
tried
actually getting a little aggressive.
Yeah, like he took the. I had knocked on the door, and the mailbox was there, and he didn't come to the door right away, so I'm just putting it in the mailbox as he opens the door, and I said, oh, hi, blah, 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 just put this in your mailbox. So he's grabbing it, and he's looking at it while I'm talking, and I said, I'm April Jeffs, I'm the conservative, and he just shoved it back at me, and he said, you get off my property, and
Wow.
and then was yelling, like I was down the driveway, and I could hear him still screaming, get lost, and then he started yelling at the guys that were with me across the street, and then they're looking at me like, are you okay? And I said, no, I'm good. And that's the only real aggressive one, but obviously something has happened in his life where he,
bad experience.
Yeah,
sure.
so I mean, I don't want to see him take that out on me or anybody else, but that was when I walked away. I thought obviously something has really something has happened, and dogs are the big one, especially out here in Wainfleet. That was one of the most scared times was out on Wilford Road in the first election, and I actually kind of had it happen in Thorold last year too, because you don't get it as much in the subdivisions because people have their dogs on leashes or in their house. But I walked up on a porch and it was kind of semi-covered, and I knocked on the door, and there was a kitten there, and I love cats, so I'm so focused, I'm petting this kitten, and no one's coming to the door, and then all of a sudden I hear behind me this low growl. I turn around, and I think it was like a pit. No. Yeah, it was like a pit bull mix, and it was right behind me, and the teeth and the nose are like flared, and I thought, oh my gosh, and I think it had been sleeping in the corner, and I didn't see it, and so he was smart, like he just quietly came over and he got behind me. So I had my friend with me, and she was at the end of the walkway in the car. And I turned and I tried to be like that Cesar Millan, says, be assertive. And it followed me growling all the way down the pathway. And she's smiling at me, and I'm giving her this look. And then all of a sudden she sees the dog, and then her face changes. And I just calmly got in the car. And as soon as I closed the door, the dog went nuts. And I think, so I actually don't know if it would have hurt me. Like, I think that was its role, was like get me off the property. But
wow.
And then I surprised a German Shepherd on a lead. I was just barreling up a driveway, and he was around the corner. So I felt bad because I scared the dog, but it went nuts. And if it had more lead, I probably yeah. Stan Pettit used to tell me to carry like milk bones or something in your pocket.
I was going to say bear mace, but I guess that's
well, yeah, you don't want to spray someone's dog, but and he said he got bit. He almost broke his arm. He got bit by a Rottweiler once.
Wow.
Yeah. So lots of interesting stories. Yeah. And people, with no soliciting signs, like I won't go up, I won't push, and I don't go, and but so it's.
So how long do you when you go out? So if you got 2 hours, do you say I want to try and grab 40 doors? Do you have a goal?
No, I don't put I think there's an expectation from the party to hit so many a month, but I mean, the reality is like people work, like meeting the candidates and stuff. So I'm pretty aggressive in getting out there as much as I can. And I do enjoy it. Like, I think if you didn't enjoy it, you'd be hard pressed to be really successful in it.
Yeah.
But I do like it, even if we get, yelled at or, people say things that are not nice, and you just have to kind of let it roll off and keep moving. But we usually, I don't know, I know there was one Saturday where we had a couple hundred doors. Wow. Was pretty good. Yeah
That's awesome.
But some people aren't home too, like that's not talking to everybody, but
the only other person I talked to in politics was Lucas Spinoza.
Okay.
And he told me, like, because he was talking about how many doors he was hitting, and he really covered a lot of territory.
Yeah.
He was kind of saying too, you want to talk, but you can't. Like, he spent time with people, but if you spend 45 minutes at every door, you're only gonna do.
No, exactly. And I think because yesterday was
like, if you knocked on my door today, you'd get none done. They would just
yeah. Well, and sometimes I find too, like I find you gauge the conversation. Like if they don't mind and they're really helping me learn more,
right.
I'm like, you know what? We still have a long ways to go, and it's okay. But if the conversation starts to be, sometimes people are upset about something, and then they're kind of saying the same thing over and over again. Well, then I maybe politely think, I'll say, okay, well, I better get moving along or what have you. But I take it kind of as a lot of it's an information gathering
for sure.
thing, because it helps me understand better. Like I know the issues are less taxes, less government, and but there are the specifics, and it's just interesting too, to even just from a personal perspective, to understand what different people go through. Like everybody's got a story to tell and things going on in their life, and so even if it's maybe not something that's kind of pertinent to what I might be dealing with in the future, although everything kind of goes back to government, it seems. But you just hear different stories, and people will tell you stuff. It's like I said, when I was mayor, people would come in, and by the time they left, they were just
knew a lot about
them. But I always took that, when that happened, I always took it as a compliment.
For 100%.
They felt comfortable to, to sit and talk to me about stuff like that. So
I like it.
Yeah.
I think I got one last thing.
Okay. We've been like, this is like have we been at this 2 hours? I don't know. How long have we been?
2 hour, 1 hour, 59 minutes.
Wow.
That's a good one.
Yeah, it is. That's good. Okay. What do you got?
I think this is a good last thing, Ten.
Okay.
Why should I vote for you?
Why should you vote for me? Oh, that's good. That's deep.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So, okay, even before you answer, I'll review for myself, and if anybody makes it this far, I'm sure we'll have some. So you're running for MP federally.
Conservative Party. Yeah.
Conservative Party. Mm-hmm. The election is
October 21st of this year.
October 21st. So we're coming up on June, July, August, September, October. You got 5 months.
Yeah.
You're up against 4 other people or so, because I guess there are small parties or whatever. Yeah,
well, the big so Vance, who is the current MP, Malcolm Allen, who was an MP and is now going to run again. So they both are very experienced. And then
I didn't even realize this was federally. Sorry to interrupt. That makes it even more exciting.
Yeah, yeah. And then there's a gentleman who was just named as the Green Party candidate, and he's from Port Colborne, and I don't think I've met him, but looking forward to meeting him. His name is Mike Tomeno, I think. Okay. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. And then myself. So we're the kind of the 4 main, and then you might see some independents and other parties, like Libertarian might have a candidate, and but we'll be the 4 main parties. So
even before you answer, then something to clear this up for me. Then you're running federally, so who can vote for you? Is it
anybody,
like
any eligible
BC?
Oh no, just in our riding. So I'm running federally, so I would be the representative for the if I was successful for the Niagara Centre riding. There's 338 seats across Canada.
Okay.
And so I would be representing the Niagara Centre.
So you sit federally voted municipal.
So people in Welland, Port Colborne, Thorold, and South St. Catharines would decide whether they want me or Vance or Malcolm or.
Did you say Wainfleet?
No, Wainfleet's not in the riding anymore. That's what I was saying earlier.
I can't vote for
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. I know. That's the crux of the... Wainfleet
okay, so I can't vote for you. So why should anybody vote for you?
Why should anybody vote for me? I think a lot of it is, that's a good question, and it's good because I don't have a elevator speech with regard to that. Yeah. And I always have a hard time kind of talking about the positive traits that I have. I don't think anybody likes humble, to. Yeah. Well, I think a lot of people, we all tend to look more at the negative than the positive, but I care, and that sounds cliche, but I really do.
I can see that. Yeah.
There were so many times I agonized. Actually, I feel myself getting emotional. Agonized over stuff that happened in Wainfleet. And I get it. And people would be so furious because of the way we voted. After we weighed everything out, we had to go a certain way. And I don't think some people did. Some residents really understood, even if they didn't agree with me. They or with our council, they understood. That we were sometimes, between a rock and a hard place, but but I really do, weigh everything out and try to be, very cautious in my approach, and really, listen to what people have to say, and be upfront if you can't help somebody. Because I think that's a mistake a lot of people make, where Scott Louis was our CAO for years, and he would say, don't give people false hope. Like, if you can't, if you really know you're not going to be able to do something for them, then or be able to help them with that issue, if the bylaws or the law has it a certain way and you can't, then you can't. And so and hard work. Like, I know this, especially being the mayor, like, people would say, you only make this much, and why are you running around doing this and that? And I'm like, because that's the role as the mayor, as community leader, serving the public. So
that's, to interrupt quickly, that's one of the jokes I come back with when people say you should run for mayor. I said I can't afford to.
Yeah.
Because
it's true, and that's usually why municipally people kind of, people will get asked, and a lot of people will say no, like, I can't, because I have a business and it'll take away from my business, and it's not I hate to say not worth it, but they weigh it out,
compensation,
and yeah. Whereas I was in a position at the time where I was still married, and then that was a bit of a transition, though, when I became a single mom, and then that's when I kind of increased the photography, but I managed to find a balance. But it's that sacrifice. Like, when you're a public servant at any level, it's a level of sacrifice, and
100%.
And you have to have good people surrounding you, which I do.
That's good. That's key.
Yeah. I have great people. Like, our campaign team is phenomenal, and they're just regular people. Like, they have political experience. I mean, you can't do something like this and not have political experience, but
I have to ask one. Leanna Villela, is she part of this?
She not because Leanna's so busy now. Leanna got elected to she's one of the Welland regional councillors, and she works full time in a lawyer's office, and she still runs her travel agency business, and she does Float Fest, and she does a bunch of other stuff.
Her plate is full too. But I have a lot. I gotta have her on one time.
Yeah.
Because she's
full plate. There in the background. She texted me last night. Actually, gave me just like this is gonna be great kind of text and everything. Yeah. So no, she's there, but she's very, 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 very busy. I would imagine she might come out and do maybe a little bit of door knocking with us, and so
nice.
She's come to events with me too. She's been my date a couple times, and because people kind of connect us too. So but
awesome.
I think that I know that every decision I would make, a lot of thought goes into it, and I'm not afraid to go up against I don't know. I've been beaten up a lot of times, so I mean, I've been down that road a few times, and it's been painful. But
I believe it. See, like, I have so much respect for it. Like, more so now that with the business I'm in and the marketing I do, because I get stuff too, and I can only imagine. Like, you have to have, for myself, you have to have thick skin in sales, because you lose more than you win. So you got to learn from these losses and work on the wins.
Mm-hmm.
And your skin gets thicker, and
it does.
You got a lot of eyes. You got, and the even tougher thing, I see relations and not, because in my business, it's interesting because I work with realtors from all different brokerages all the time, and we're competitors, but we're working together. Mm-hmm. And politics is kind of like that too, I believe.
Yeah.
Because you guys are, when you're campaigning to win, everybody's fighting for a spot.
Yeah.
But then there's different governments going on, so you have to work together.
Right. And some people don't get that, and some people are very.
So that's why I'm a 1.3 instead of a 1. But okay, keep going. Sorry.
But just because there's a trend, politics has become kind of polarizing, and so there are people who you either agree with me or I never speak to you again, and I don't understand that thought process.
Neither do I.
Yeah, we're all entitled to our beliefs, like our core beliefs and our opinions, and that's one my mom always taught me. Don't burn any, never burn any bridges. And sometimes when you're in politics and you have to make a decision, unfortunately you don't mean to, but it's just, but to go out and slam other people and then expect to work together after, it just, and that's what we were saying earlier when you talked about mudslinging, and that was what was so fantastic about that last election was, like I say, Benoit said at that radio debate, I just want to say, great job. Like, we didn't get nasty or silly or anything like that. And now when I see Jeff out in public, like, I chat with him, and same with Benoit, and because you never know, down the road we may, all
pass
be
cross.
Yeah.
For sure.
So if you burn those bridges, but a lot of people don't get that, and then they do, and then
that's what I think politics is. This is my 2 cents. We had a last question, but it's okay. We're falling apart. Yeah. With politics, that's what I find with politics is the challenge is you've got an issue and a concern today, and you fight it out or whatever, but then the next sometime soon you're gonna be talking to the same people, and you might be siding or against it.
Absolutely.
You
have to hold hands with different people at different times.
Right. Yeah. See, so I've never, I didn't really care much about politics before, because I, first of all, didn't understand it. Mm-hmm. And now as I'm learning more, that's how I see politics. Part of it is just I relate it to real estate. You're working with people, you're working against them different, but you have to keep moving forward. You can't just shut her down. And just with anything, I can't imagine being in your shoes where when you have to make a decision on something and people are against it, and now those people that they are against you, that's so tough. In my job, that doesn't happen. So,
no, there are people who won't, like, unfortunately won't speak to me, and I see people in a grocery store and they look the other way that were people who were once maybe supporters, and but it's part of it. It's just something that as I kind of matured in the role of community leader, it's still everybody's human, and it's still I don't think I'd be human if it didn't bother me, but you have to. I used to kind of obsess about it, and now I have to let it go and think, well, that's their right to be mad about it or be disenchanted with me. So but I was gonna say too, the thick skin thing. Early on, people would say, you gotta get a thicker skin, and I would hear it. I even would Google how to get a thicker skin. No, I did, because I thought,
believe it.
But then I've learned in the last couple of years, it's going through the trials and the tribulations.
The trenches.
There's you can't just change your thinking and think, well, I don't care, because especially based on how your personality is. So it had to come with going through some of the rough stuff.
Trenches.
Yeah. And it's pain. Like, it's, it's painful. Like, there's physical pain, and then there's emotional pain and mental kind of anguish, and
that's part of the loudest voices aren't always.
Yeah. And trying to determine that. Yeah.
So, why are people voting for you? You're passionate. Clearly you care.
Yeah, passionate. I care. I work hard.
You've got some experience. This is good.
And I know how it works. And I think too, it is my connections in the community. It's I know all the mayors of the municipalities in the riding. Some of them I worked with last term of council.
Nice.
I know a lot of the some of the, like, the CAOs and staff in the municipalities, which is really helpful. Like, I have working relationships with these people. With a lot of the community organizations over the years, I've established rapport with the executive directors, and
you're connected.
Like, I've been in the community, active in the community, that I understand, and I think, and I'm constantly learning what the needs are, and and one of the biggest fears too, and I'll just kind of say this, and then when we're talking about the housing shortage, or not housing shortage, but the housing costs rising, and and I wonder, like, we do have still a fairly substantial vulnerable kind of communities in Welland, and in all the municipalities, and I just worry what happens to those vulnerable communities as we have, and that's where the talk about affordable housing, and actually Leanna's been really championing that at the region, and she's been talking the tiny homes, but it's following those issues and talking to people like Leanna, and
I could talk another 2 hours just about that.
And then again, it's the door knocking and going into all all the areas in the riding, like all the areas, and talking to people and getting a handle on you know, what their issues are in terms of, you know, healthcare and all those kind of things. So
I love it.
Yeah, it's good. And then, you know, it's if things don't work out the way I hope, then there's you know, that helps me move into a different direction. Where
for sure.
Yeah.
Life doesn't end when one way or the other after the election.
Well, like I say, I love community service, so stay involved one way or another. So
love it. I think we're good.
I think so too.
I'm sure we could keep going.
I know. I can't. We both like to talk, so it was good. Well, thanks for having me. It was
my pleasure.
Very cool. And you're doing a great job with all your videos and everything.
Thank you.
Everybody knows. Like I say, the two young men on my campaign were like, "Oh yeah, that guy, he's so cool." Like, so I thought I got to tell you that. So
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
We'll shut her down. Yeah.
Okay.
2 hours 13 minutes. That's a good run.
I love it.